Hi, I'm Vanessa. Welcome back to my sewing room. And honestly, my sewing room lately has started to feel like, well, work. Every time I come down, I feel like there's something that I need to get done, and I've kind of lost some of my joy, some of my sojo. And so I thought it'd be nice to do a video of all about how to get your sojo back. And I used the greatest philosopher of our time to help me. So, who is this great philosopher? Let me give you a hint. This is my second painting. I have been trying to learn how to paint. So, I've been watching a lot of Bob Ross. And what I've learned is that Bob Ross is an amazing philosopher. It is all about being happy in your hobby. And I am a firm believer in that. I absolutely feel like creative outlets are vital to our health. With an autoimmune disease, the more creative outlets that I have, I've noticed that I have a lot less brain fog. So I decided to take some of these things I learned with Bob Ross. And some of these things are perfect. First of all, I put down my seam ripper for this because there are no mistakes. There's just happy accidents. Now, this is not something I suggest on every project, but for this project, I put it down because I was going to lean into those happy mistakes. I was also going to, if I needed to fix something, lean into happy seams and try some different happy gathers. So I really did try to have this happy mentality about sewing this dress. And I have to tell you, the end result is it did work. Having this joy and trying to not worry about the perfection of sewing, but really the enjoyment of it and just that excitement of it. Sure, did I do things in the normal order of operations? Absolutely not. But I had so much joy, so much fun. And so I do suggest this. So I'm going to tell you the different things I learned as I was sewing this dress. Now, let's talk about this dress. Now, I know nobody wanted to see a haunted nightgown. No one wanted to see me haunt Jess, and I honestly thought that would be so much fun, but I get it. But if we can take that artistic interpretation, so the runway fashion is art, right? And how is that going to trickle down to what's actually going to be on trend in the summer? That's what I really love. And so when I see this trend, all I see is absolute dreamy, romantic, beautiful, and comfortable. So I decided to go with another Marieke dress, but you never start a painting without inspiration. So I have my inspiration right here, and that's exactly what I wanted, was this loose, gathered, comfortable dress. And by taking the Marieke and sizing up, it gave me this totally different dress than what I started with. I love how the waist is kind of dropped. I love the delicate gathers of this. And I love the extra gather. I call these my happy gathers. I also had some happy mistakes, as well as some happy extra seams. But at the end of the day, just changing my mentality when it comes to sewing did bring back my sojo. So I hope you enjoy this video, and I'm going to tell you all my Bob Ross knowledge to help you have a happy sewing. I'm at my cutting mat and I'm cutting this one size bigger. So for me, that is going to be a size small, and I'm cutting it across at the waistline. So you can see right here, so there is markings on the pattern that says waistline. I'm going to show you where my mistake is just in a minute when I was cutting and how I fixed it. But from here, we're just kind of cutting along the edge where I have it on fold. Now, I am not going to be too concerned. Now, first of all, this is gauze and a double gauze. And as you know, it can be a little finicky. And the more you try to overcorrect and to get it perfect, sometimes the more mistakes that you have happen. So using this method of there really is no mistakes really works on this particular fabric. So right here, I'm about 24 inches wide. and then I'm about the same length. And so you want to just measure yourself. For me, going from my waistline to get to my knees is 22 inches. So adding a little inches from there works perfectly. But, I think everyone has a little different length from your waistline to your knees. So make sure you measure yourself and you know how long you want it. But you may want this longer or shorter. This is the beauty of this, is that you really get to decide. Now, for the back panel, I want it a little bit longer. So I did add about, right there, you can see about 2.5 inches. And I just want to make this the same length. So your back needs to be a little bit wider. What you're looking for is, compared to your front panel, you want it to be 1.5 times bigger, and the same on your back. So you're measuring the full length of the side plus half of that length again. And I feel like that gives you really nice, happy gathers without too much bulk. Now, here I'm just cutting along the width of my fabric that I have left, and I want it 6 inches wide, and this is going to be that bottom gather. Now, I am starting to run out of fabric. I'm running really low, and so I'm just trying to get as many pieces as I can, and I ended up actually not using all these. The nature of double gauze is that it kind of stretches and it grows, and so if you iron it, it just gets bigger. So you have to be careful here. So here's my mistake. I accidentally cut at the length line. So then I just had to add 4 inches on at the length line to make it to the waist. So instead of recutting it, I added this extra little piece. So there, I took my accident and made it into a happy seam. And as you can see, my side seams are actually lining up perfect again, and there's no need to worry. Both of them are about 8 inches long here. Now we're going to sew together the shoulder seams, but you may notice that I already have a lot of this top already serged, and it's just so this fabric can stay together and not grow too much on one side or the other. This is just the nature of it. It's so nice and breezy, comfortable and warm. But for these amazing attributes, it can be a little difficult to work with. So here we're just going to be sewing up these shoulder seams, and on both sides. Now, normally with the skirt, I would actually sew the skirt together and do one continuous line of gathers, but that can get a little hard to make sure that the thread doesn't tear, that you don't have gathers that aren't working, that your side seams match up. So I decided to make it easier for me. I felt like that was definitely in the spirit of sewing with joy, is what's going to make this a little bit easier and prevent some of those headaches that you normally run into. And this fabric actually gathers really well. It feels a little thicker, and so I was kind of surprised at how easily this gathered. So I only have it about 4mm stitch on here, but I also have my tension only at like a 6, because we're not doing a double gather, we're doing a 1.5 gather, and so you just don't need too much. And we're wanting these gathers not to add too much bulk around the waist, and so that's why we're being a little careful here and not going. Now, if you were doing this with linen, you could absolutely make more gathers, but look how lovely that looks with that soft gather. Now that was the back that we just finished, and now we're going to be adding the gathers onto both the front crossover pieces. And so once I have my gathers even, then I can just clip it onto the front. I'm going to be doing both fronts here. And what I love about this method is, just like a painting, you always have, you split your landscape for one side for the sky and the other side for the land. And so splitting this pattern into the bodice as well as the skirt, I think really kept with this theme of breaking it up. And so I could add these details, whether it was the bottom or the top. So once I have the gathers added on, it's time to sew up the side seams, but I need to have these ties. Now, when you iron this fabric, it grows. So I started out with about 30 inches right here with these ties, but they probably grew in an extra 2 inches. So just know that this double gauze does grow. So this is the binding method, where you iron in half and you bring the sides to that center seam, and then you iron them in and fold them over. And I just felt like this would work better. And there you can see my end is folded under. Now when you're sewing this, you want to always make sure you start with this side side that's not folded under, because this side is what's going to be on the inside by our body. So if you have to kind of force it in, it's not going to be completely, uneven right there. Or if it is, it's going to be okay because it's going to be in the side your dress, and then you can easily get over that extra fabric at the bottom without having it show. So it makes a really smooth tie at the bottom if you can just remember to sew that fold under section last. Now, I suggest you try on your dress or wrap it around your body and just kind of get the feel of where you're going to want these ties to be. I always, whenever it has put the tie on the right side, it's like, is it the right side looking down or is it the right side on? So try it on, see where you want the ties, and then clip them in right now. And now it's time to sew up the side seams. And so you can see that tie right there. Now, what I've learned with not only this fabric, but with working with oil paints, when you make a decision, you have to take that decision and go with it. And so with this fabric, even though as I'm ironing it, working with it, it's growing in different places, that if I just keep going and I try my best to make sure that at least everything is lined up, I knew that this was going to end up working out. And so that's what's so tricky about both sewing and painting, especially when you're dealing with fabric that shifts a lot. So this was just perfect. This was a perfect mentality to go into with this lovely fabric. This fabric is so wonderful. They make baby blankets out of it. They make a lot of baby clothes. But it's really fun to just make a beautiful dress. It looks dreamy, and the texture is just so lovely on it. And so here we're just sewing up those side seams at a 3/8 seam allowance that we would do normally with the Marieke. Now, this is my little trick with the Marieke, is to always add in a little 1/4 inch elastic here. This is the ultra soft elastic that we used for face masks. I continue to use this. It's a nice soft elastic that's not going to be too heavy in this area around the bust. Just whenever you're sewing around, whenever you're making one of these wrapped dresses, making sure that it stays on your bust is important. So I just add this little piece of elastic in. Now here I'm just going to be serging at the side of the skirt as well as around this elastic. This is going to help secure it in even more, and then it's going to help me have something to hold on to when I'm doing a rolled hem, and this will be nicely attached to your chest, and no one's going to see it, but you're going to feel extra secure in your beautiful dress. So this is a little detail that I really like to add. It's just kind of like prepping your canvas, just making sure that you're going to have a little nicer fit. I want to be able to fold that serge under and then over where this tie is going to be. So I'm just kind of looking at it. I don't want to have it with the other serge line at the waistline because that's going to be too thick. So I just moved it up just a little bit, and then you can see how that's going to roll over, and then I can pull that tie out. It's going to be the perfect placement. Now, after I have that in, we're going to be adding the gathers. So I wanted to kind of get a view of what this was going to look like. So instead of going through and just start roll hemming that bodice, I wanted to add the gathers first. I knew that this would bring me more happiness to see how those beautiful gathers happened. And so here I just am having it at a 4mm length and then about a 6 tension. So I don't have it all the way up, because if you accidentally gather this too much, then you're going to not have long enough threads. And this fabric, I was shocked at how amazing it gathers. That open gauze is amazing. So here is the bottom of the skirt, and that's just going to be a nice soft gather. Instead of being like, I need it to be gathered this perfect length, I kind of just guessed. And it ended up, once I got the gathers in and the seams lined up, It was absolutely perfect. So sometimes those little, instead of taking the time and really making sure I had the right length, it was really fun just to be like, what will be. And I feel like this amount of fabric will look great on that amount of fabric. And then to have all the seams work out, it was really magical. Now, do I suggest this on every single sew? No, but just sometimes letting things be without having this absolute idea of perfection is kind of nice. So to secure the inside, we're going to add an elastic loop so we can add a button on the wrap side that's going to be going under the side that has the tie. And then we have to just roll him all the way down. To break up this roll hem, because it is so long, I like to start at the center seam. And so I'm sewing down one side and then up the other, and we're meeting in the middle. It just breaks it up. And so if you're somebody who can get a little bored doing the same thing for a very long time, breaking it up and then going in and get a drink in the middle of it, I think is just a nice little way to not be too overwhelmed by this long seam. So take a break in the middle of your long hemming and you will be in a much happier state than just trying to sit still for 20 minutes roll hemming this whole dress. So there's a little tip for me. And here we are just going over that tie. So we rolled hemmed it down, and then I'm going to actually back stitch it and then the tie down. So I brought the tie around the back, and now I can just tie it down with a back stitch. And then when I actually sew over it, it's going to be locked in, and that's not going to come out ever. And then I can continue doing that rolled hem all the way down the dress. Now here's a little detail of joy, is using those old grandma buttons that have been collected for years on my brand new dress. This one even had thread already in it that I had to take out, but I'm excited. I always love to use these. I feel like these buttons and these little trinkets that were collected for over such a long period of time, to be able to use those one-off buttons in these wrapped dresses or wrapped skirts is just a special place for them, and just kind of takes your dress to the little vintage element that connects it to the past. So as I sew on this button, I am pretty much done with this dress, and my sojo has returned. It has been such fun not being a perfectionist on this dress, just letting what will be, and I barely had enough fabric. There was no room for mistakes, and yet the mistakes that I made worked out just fine. Let me show you what the finished dress looks like. And there are no mistakes. So here is my happy extra seam that I ended up with. And these ties are so nice and long that you can actually wrap them around to give you a little bit more shape. Now to make this look a lot more like my inspo, which was a nice dreamy loose dress, I'm going to just tie it over to the side right here. So you have two different options with this dress. And then you have this nice oversized cotton dress to go run through your lilac fields. Here's another little look closer to my inspiration with the knee out. I absolutely love how this dress turned out. I think it's so comfortable, but there's also something innately feminine about it. I love that I can either wear it a little bit looser or I can tie it. That's one thing that I struggle with wrap dresses, is just that extra tightness around my waist. So to be able to have options here where I can have it tied a little tighter and have a more waist, or I can loosen up at the end of the day, is perfect for me. I also think that this turned out so beautiful, and it just goes to show you that you can have multiple patterns with just one pattern, with just changing up the sizes, maybe lengthening it, adding little extra gathers. There's so many options when we can get creative with our patterns. And I know with these days, with everything costing a little extra, being a little creative does help stretch our patterns as well as our closet. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe. If you have any ways that you treat your sojo, definitely put in the comments because I want to hear. And again, happy sewing.